How's it going, everybody? It's Pilot Flame, and we are back with another video. And today it's the long-awaited tactics talk for Arsenal versus Tottenham Hotspurs, where Jose Mourinho's team triumphed over Arsenal 2-0. If you're liking the series, make sure to leave a like on the video. I know it's been delayed, but make sure to leave a like on the video because it is back now. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Make sure to turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also, make sure to give us a follow over on Twitter and Twitch. It's PilotFlame226 on those platforms. We will be doing a stream for the Game Week 13 deadline. It will either be usual time, 7 p.m. EST or thereabouts, for this evening at the time of recording, so that'd be Monday the 14th of December, or it's going to be 1 hour before the deadline. I'm still not sure if I'm going to be staying home for work tomorrow or if I'm going to be going in, so make sure to just check out Twitter for those updates. So yeah, so stay tuned for that. But it's been long overdue. It's been since Game Week 11 this game was played, so let's get right into it. So this is how both teams lined up in the North London Derby in Game Week 11. Both teams pretty much matching each other's formation. So if we run through the Spurs lineup, it was Lloris in goal, Reguilon, Dyer, Alderweireld, and Aurier, which seemed to be a pretty standard back four now for Spurs going forward. Højbjerg and Sissoko as the two center defensive midfielders. Again, been pretty much a staple. Son and Bergwijn occupying the left and right flanks, with Kane playing through the middle. And Lo Celso in this game was chosen over Ndombele, who was deemed not fit for the game. Apparently, he came out and said, "I wasn't fit enough, for the game." Maybe it's been fatiguing quite a lot because he has been playing quite consecutively in starts, although he has been being subbed off early. And Lo Celso is probably more of a more destructive than Ndombele, and probably is a little bit better in order to basically kind of throw off the likes of Lacazette, who, in my opinion, just hasn't really done it for Arsenal since he's arrived. Hasn't been very consistent, and if you can throw off his mental, then you can basically just ruin their any form of creativity at all. Arsenal, again, 4-2-3-1 formation. Leno in goal, Bellerin holding Gabriel Tierney seems to be the favorite back four, with Thomas Partey returning to the side and Xhaka in the two kind of double pivot players. Saka on the left, Willian on the right, Lacazette playing the number 10, and Aubameyang kind of basically roaming through the middle, although he did kind of move from side to side as the game progressed, with kind of potentially playing like a 4-2-2 system in this sort of shape. Spurs, when they were defending as well, more or less went to go match that in certain scenarios where they would go kind of using Lo Celso, so kind of how they use Ndombele if they needed to press in certain situations there. So the next thing I wanted to show you is how Spurs and Arsenal kind of played the game out, and we'll see that on the next board. So for 2/3 of the game, based on the possession that was shown for the end game stats, this is kind of how Spurs were often defending and kind of how Arsenal were attacking, and it played right into Spurs' hands. So we would often see a very lowish block. We would see Kane kind of dropping into this like space in here, Lo Celso dropping in space in here, Son kind of covering the inside channel with Reguilon kind of looking at the overlap, Bergwijn matching on the same side with Aurier, and they would just match up in that regard. Højbjerg and Sissoko would basically make it so that Lacazette just didn't have fun in the game at all, and would kind of mark him. And then the two center backs are responsible for Aubameyang basically making these runs in the insides in here. But what Partey would do is when the ball was played over to the side, he would shift across, and then same for if the ball was on the opposite flank, he would shift across here, with Arsenal basically sacrificing one of their double pivot to basically be more defensive minded. However, that didn't really help them out when they got countered, and we'll see that in a little bit. But basically, they would have, even when building out from the back, let's say the ball was, with the likes of Gabriel, they would basically spread across in a 3, and they would have Partey basically be the one man in the middle, with kind of Lacazette dropping off deep, and they would, kind of work the ball in this area here, being able to play it out to Xhaka, out to like Tierney, who'd be out here, and do those sorts of things. But I think they're basically sacrificing a midfielder in terms of creativity to make sure they have more security when building out from the back, which Arsenal has done better at, for sure. However, that doesn't really translate to much because what often happens, because nobody really occupies that space, you kind of, in more recent games, you see without Partey in there. Let's say this is a Ceballos. You have Ceballos here. You have like Xhaka, like in here. You have Saka kind of dropping in deep. You have Tierney kind of playing in the overlap. You have Willian out on the right hand side. You have Bellerin out on this side as well, and you kind of have the ball kind of just going back and forward, back and forward, back and forward, sideways, backwards, and you get like this kind of like U shape in terms of pass, and there's nothing that's good. Like nobody's coming into this space in here. I think, and with Lacazette, he's just, when he goes to hold up the ball, he often, loses it. Aubameyang isn't really making the runs in behind that you would like to see. Not that anyone could pick him out in the first place, because I think that they need time on the ball. Xhaka does at least, and Partey, now that he's injured again and could be out for another month or so, isn't able to, there's nobody in the team that can really drive past a player like he did when he played versus Man United, which he did on a couple of occasions. But overall, I think the Spurs are we're basically looking to frustrate them in this low block here. Basically, this space was always super congested, and basically they were asking questions of Bellerin and Willian and Tierney and Saka to basically play balls into this area in here, where they would just mop it up all day because they have more height in Dyer versus like the likes of Aubameyang, and you have the pace of Bergwijn, Aurier, Son and Reguilon to basically keep up or even exceed the pace of Bellerin, Willian, Saka and Tierney, and they never really could get anything in this sort of area because they were often closed down by Højbjerg and Sissoko, and often Kane making defensive headers in the box as well as Lo Celso. And their defensive work in their shape was quite good overall, which resulted in Arsenal not really creating too many chances that was worrying Lloris. I know in the second half Lacazette did have a header, but again, it was in a position that was going to be a bit more in kind of this space, which you would recommend, kind of not really worry about. I would say you kind of recommend, if anything, if Arsenal are going to shoot or create chances, you want to see if they can do it from the wide areas because they're not very good at crossing, or you would have it in in this kind of space here. If they're trying to win headers from this area behind the penalty spot, you would probably bank Lloris making that save any day of the week. So now let's take a look at how the two goals transpired. So the first goal transpires from when Bellerin has the ball in possession, as you can see with the players on the pitch here. Basically, he's trying to pick out a pass into Aubameyang into this space. Now, that is a very dangerous pass, and the reason being is because you have Højbjerg, who can cut off the channel of the pass here. You have Dyer, who can cut off the channel of the pass here. You have Sissoko, who can cut off the channel of pass here if he comes across. And you have Alderweireld in this position, who's in a very good position to look to potentially cut the pass off overall. I would probably think, obviously in hindsight, it would make sense to probably play the ball to, into the space to Partey and then have him drive and run through in this space here and basically ask a question of Højbjerg. But ultimately, Bellerin decides to play the ball into Aubameyang. And what happens is Alderweireld and Dyer basically address the ball. It then is nodded out and is ended up received on, kind of in this area here by Kane. Now, in this position, you're in a very bad spot if you're Arsenal because you basically have Gabriel 1v1 versus Kane. You now have a situation where there's all this space in behind, which is exactly what Mourinho's team wants, for Kane to turn into the space and potentially play a ball in and over the top. You also have Bergwijn 1v1 versus Tierney, and I think Bergwijn is going to be faster than Tierney to get in around the outside and again attack this space. It's a very dangerous place to basically lose the ball in this area with Spurs players able to just run in behind. So let's see how that kind of plays out. So the ball goes into Kane. Partey then tries to come and address him and trying to cut off the passing lane in this area right in here. What happens is Holding assesses the danger and tries to basically drops off and ends up coming back in this position. Bellerin ends up running back in this position as well. And then Son basically makes a run in this kind of fashion out on the left flank, which Kane ultimately ends up picking him out. Willian doesn't really track him too much, and ultimately by the end of the play ends up in this kind of area in here. And basically Lo Celso kind of ends up in this position over here, and you have Bergwijn, who basically takes Tierney in and around, and then kind of makes his way towards the back post area. So let's see how that kind of plays out in movement. So Partey comes across, Kane then kind of shimmies onto his left foot. Partey ends up getting beaten. Son then picks up the ball after receiving a pass. Holding then drops off. Bellerin kind of tucks in and around in this position as Son drives. Son ends up getting in this position here. Holding is well off him in this case. Bellerin is kind of in this position in here. Reguilon actually makes a very intelligent run into this space, kind of taking, kind of the field of view off of Son. So he makes this run and tries to make the overlap. Tierney's over on this side. Gabriel's on this side here. Bergwijn again doing this like a similar thing, kind of taking his run into this space, which then attracts the the eyes of Tierney, and Gabriel in a sense are kind of looking in that direction. And Kane kind of just stays in and around this space as he attempts to kind of get back. Partey kind of gets back in this position-ish to cover Kane with a kind of level. And then what Son does is he basically has the space to cut in on his right and attempt the shot from here. Now, you would think normally that would be, a situation where it's very, easy to be dealt with by the goalkeeper. However, Son does take a very good strike of the ball. It's on his favorite foot. He has space to do it. And you can also ask questions of the goalkeeper. So normally in this position, you would think that if you were to, if he's shooting on his right foot, you would think the ball is lined up there. So now I'm going to try to draw a straight line as best I can. But you would think the goalkeeper would be somewhere looking at this angle. So he's going to be on this line. I'm just going to move that out of the way. He would be on this line if he's going to be looking at it here. Or in that line-ish. It's roughly. But what we saw was probably Leno was probably maybe a step or two to his right. And when you saw the ball go in, Leno, if he was one step to his right, he could have potentially tipped it around the post. Now Leno's obviously a much better goalkeeper than me, and it looked to I would think he probably would look back on it and maybe say maybe he was a bit too far over, or gave Son a bit too much credit. So I don't think if you take one step to your, to your left there in that situation to be a bit more central, not crazy central. I don't think Son can beat you from outside the box at your near post. You have much less distance to cover. You're much more worried about him basically bending the ball around the likes of Bellerin and Holding into the far corner, which is exactly what he did. So, and with Holding kind of dropping off and kind of, looking at Reguilon, taking the overlap, I think as Holding, you have to kind of go and press Son. If he plays in Reguilon, I think you probably bank your chances at blocking a Reguilon cross because you have Gabriel and potentially Bellerin in positions to block that. But then Son just takes on the strike and it ends up finding the top corner. So overall, beautiful counterattack from Spurs, and they end up finding themselves in an even better position for their second goal, which we'll take a look at now. So for the second goal, which Harry Kane scored just before halftime, which is pretty much the dagger in the heart, as it were, for Arsenal, basically what happens is there is a ball that is basically swung in, looking to, again, find Aubameyang in this space here. Now, again, Spurs are a little bit deeper in the sense, but it was in a play in transition, and you'll notice that there's all of these Spurs players are basically coming back from a transition from Arsenal. So this is what Spurs would want. They would want Arsenal basically kind of a surge man forward, be like, okay, we can counter Spurs, and that's exactly what Spurs would want because they're able to defend it in such a way. So what happens is the ball's played in. Aurier cuts off Aubameyang, who tries to basically, try to do an overhead kick of some kind, or he basically tries to have to reach back for it. And that's where it's dangerous because it allows for Aurier to basically attack this space or potentially play into Lo Celso, who at the time would have been covered by Thomas Partey. However, Thomas Partey picked up an injury in transition. It looked like a hamstring or a groin or something of that nature, and he was currently walking off the pitch. So in normal scenarios, Lo Celso would be covered by Thomas Partey. That's not saying that if Thomas Partey is in this position, that Lo Celso finds a pocket and Aurier can basically drive, address Partey, and then slip it through to Lo Celso. That is definitely possible. But Thomas Partey is effectively off the pitch, and he even tries to run back and gets to about here before he realizes that he can't actually run anymore because he's done something and re-aggravated his injury. So one would suggest that he may have been rushed back from his previous injury that he was out for, that kept him out for a number of weeks. So what does Aurier do? He gets the ball and he plays it into Lo Celso. And that obviously causes problems because then you have this massive, numbers advantage. You basically have a 5-on-2. Sissoko doesn't end up, going forward, so it ends up being more or less a 4-on-2. But let's see how kind of the transition plays out. So Gabriel kind of drops off into this space. Holding drops off more or less into this space. Bergwijn actually ends up making a run which takes him all the way to the opposite side of the field, kind of pulling away Gabriel, pulling away potentially Tierney, who is dropping off as well. So Bergwijn makes that run. Xhaka is basically removed from the play because he's too slow to get back. And Lo Celso drives until he gets to around this position in here. We see Son, who on the break basically runs alongside Kane. Him and Kane are basically in this area here, and Sissoko kind of just ends up kind of in this more or less position here. Now I've gone and just basically highlighted only the players that are in the transition here. So obviously a numbers advantage for Spurs. Lo Celso is picking up the ball in the center of basically the final third, as it were, and then he decides to play the ball in here to Son. Now, in this situation, this is definitely defendable by Arsenal, and they could potentially, cause Spurs to basically mess up this attack or basically buy time for them. But Spurs, with their intelligence and the way Mourinho has drilled them in terms of their, counterattacking prowess, Son and Kane, they know exactly what to do in this situation. So what happens is Holding is here, pretty much positions himself there. Gabriel positions himself here. By the time Tierney's coming back, but not late enough or not soon enough, Lo Celso plays the ball and it basically goes into Son, who is in this position. Now Lo Celso ends up picking up a position where he makes his way into the box somewhere around here. Bergwijn ends up trying to find his place in at the back post. And both of them end up being available because Gabriel and Holding, as Son drives with the ball, are in this area, so the cutback is definitely on for Son if he wanted to do it, and would basically force Holding and Gabriel to kind of pick up this space here. What happens is Kane's kind of in here, intelligently makes the run in and around the corner. Holding ends up coming towards Son. Son plays the ball into Kane, and then Leno comes across, and then Kane basically rifles a shot in and off the crossbar, which is basically undefendable by any goalkeeper, no matter how many you put in there. But overall, it was definitely because of the fact that Thomas Partey, we'll just put him back up on the board here, was off the pitch at the time. He could have potentially made a better or slowed up Lo Celso even a little bit to hope that Tierney would come back and defend in this area. Bellerin, who is well advanced up the pitch, he ends up the play ends up starting with him up in this area here, just way caught out of position. Willian just doesn't get back because he just doesn't have the pace to keep up with Son. And obviously, Lacazette doesn't, track back as much either. But again, number 10 role, he could be potentially tracking Lo Celso. But you would think that Partey would be the kind of counterpart to track Lo Celso, but again, was injured and off the pitch. So, fortunate for Spurs, but again, a perfectly executed counterattack, and ultimately saw them just kind of park the bus for the next 45 minutes, asking questions of Arsenal, which ultimately they had really no answer for Spurs' defense, as they ultimately just kind of crossed the ball in and didn't really do too much apart from that, and Spurs defended it quite well. And that's going to do it for this episode of Tactics Talk for Spurs and Arsenal. We're not going to be doing the Man United versus Man City one. It was a pretty boring no-no. There was some half chances for City. United didn't really want to win the game, and neither did City. So, going to skip on that one. But hopefully the Liverpool and Spurs game bring out more of this type of counterattack versus high press from Liverpool. And we'll see how Jose Mourinho goes against Jurgen Klopp this coming game week for Game Week 13. If you haven't done so already, make sure to leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and turn those notification bells on so that you can get the content as soon as it is readily available. Also, make sure to leave a comment down below as to which game you're looking forward to over this Christmas period for a potential tactics talk. I'm personally going to be maybe doing the Leeds versus United one because I think that could be very interesting in that game week. So that should be quite interesting to see how Bielsa goes to press the living daylights out of Man United, which I think I'm quite worried about because I think the only person that's really press resistant in United's team is Donny van de Beek. Also, make sure to give us a follow over on Twitter and Twitch. It's PilotFam226 on those platforms. It's important to make sure to follow us on Twitter so that you can see the updates for new live streams that are going to be going out on Twitch. We're either going to be doing it at 7 p.m. EST tonight, the time of recording, the 14th of December, the Monday, the day before the deadline, or depending, I'll have to make sure to put a final update. It could be 1 hour before the deadline tomorrow. I haven't figured out what the timing is going to be around that, but make sure to check us out on Twitter to make sure you know what time the stream will be. Thanks for watching, and until the next one, take care.